All right, so we're back. Just finished cognitive development, right? Talking about the growth of our mind all the way across our lifespan, and talked specifically about Piaget and his stages of cognitive development, and Vygotsky and sort of the proximal zone of development. But now we need to talk about our ability to communicate and sort of our language development as well. It goes hand in hand with cognitive development, right? But before we do that, we have to talk about sort of the key components of language and what language is. Language is a shared system of arbitrary symbols, right? We have like phonemes, morphemes, and the rules of semantics that are rule governed. We have grammar and syntax involved, and they produce an infinity of ideas. So the infinity of ideas. So the idea that we are able to grow cognitively is based in language. The idea that we have words to represent what we think, and that we can communicate those words to other people and they can understand it. And the fact that we have to agree upon the system so that we can understand each other and we can communicate back and forth, right? So the idea that we use rules of phonemes and morphemes and semantics and grammar and syntax all to come up with a generation, right? Generative, right? It's all ever to create ideas, and it's to be able to communicate those back and forth. All right, so let's talk about the symbols in language first. First, you have to talk about phonemes, and I always think about a phone using sound to communicate. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. And of course, we have 26 phonemes in the alphabet. The letters of the alphabet each come up with sounds. But there's also some sounds that come with alphabet pairs. So I believe we have like a total of 41 or 42, something in the 40s of phonemes, maybe 43. But like the TH sound, right, the QU sound, those things are small units of sound because they're letters that come together, the SH. So like it's our letters by themselves and their sounds are the phonemes, and also a couple of letter pairs like SH, TH. On the other side is morpheme, right? And meaning starts with M, and so does a morpheme. Morpheme is the smallest unit of a meaningful sound. So I like to think of prefixes and suffixes very importantly, like the ing or pre or ed, right? It changes the meaning. So ed turns it into past tense, like, and pre changes it from the game to before the game, right? And the ing turns it into an action. So those morphemes are the smallest units of meaningful sound because those units come with a change in the meaning of the word. And then when we talk about the rules, we're talking about semantics, okay? It's how we derive meanings from the morphemes, the words, and the sentences that we use. So the way that we put the words in play has a big impact on what the meaning of it is. So if I said that somebody is cool, it means I like them personally, right? But if I said, wow, it's really cool outside, I'm talking about the weather. So how we order the words and how we put them in the context, and sort of what the meaning is from them has a lot to do with the semantics of our language. All right, so when we talk about the like rules of sort of communicating with each other, we have to also talk about the rules of arranging the words, right? And that is sort of the syntax. And so, when we talk about the syntax, we're talking about like, does the adjective come before the noun, right? The subject, verb, direct, object sort of aspect. So when we look at different languages, they have different syntax. And a good example is English versus Spanish. If we're talking about where the president lives, in English we say the White House. In Spanish we'd say the Casa Blanca. They have different syntax, right? And all together, right? This whole idea of learning how to, use the symbols, how to use the phonemes and morphemes, how to understand the context of the words in a sentence to understand the meaning, and how to order the words in a sentence so that other people can derive meaning from us, all house sort of what grammar is. And so that would be the big sort of impact, is grammar is this sort of all-encompassing rule set. All right, so when we talk about language development, we have to talk about some of the nonverbal communication that shows up. Manual gestures are used, right? Like I'm doing well, hey, or I don't like you, and those are used to communicate, right? And what we've discovered is that these manual gestures, even though they're nonverbal, they can communicate very well, meaning, especially how we feel towards each other, and therefore they're found in all cultures. So it's not something that is just one culture specific, although what the gesture means can be culture specific. The idea of using nonverbal communication in manual gestures is not. So when we develop our language, we go in little stages, right? And this is us trying to produce the sounds and then the words themselves. And so we go from cooing as a very young infant, right, where we're doing the vowel sounds like ooh, or eh, and then we go to babbling, where we're doing phoneme sounds. We're actually creating the sounds that we need to produce all languages in the world. And at about 8 months, our babbling of the phoneme sounds actually starts to like all those like vowels and things like that. It starts to narrow itself down to, instead of all the sounds necessary for languages across the world, to just the sounds necessary for the languages that are in our environment, so that we have this ability to speak the language with those around us. And if you or if you reside in a multi-language household, then your babbling actually was narrowed down not to one language, but to two languages, because you were exposed to those two different languages. Then, between 1 and 2, we're getting to the one word stage, right? No is our favorite word. And then, of course, as we develop our language, we get into what telegraphic speech is, where we're getting into like 2 word sentences: want juice, need mommy. We're not saying I or using any other things that make up a sentence, but we're really speaking in a way that would be like quick telegraphic speech writing. We're just getting straight to the point. All right, we've talked about this before, but critical and sensitive periods. Remember, critical and sensitive period is a time in which you're real sensitive to being able to pick up something, right? Like learn something or be able to acquire a certain ability. And when it comes to language, we know that the critical period really is at a young age, all the way up before 8 is your critical period. So from 0 to 8 can be really important. And we know that as you get older, it becomes harder and harder to learn a language fluently, because you've missed out on those critical or sensitive periods. All right, another sort of aspect in language development is the mistakes that are made as we start to learn the rules. So during our telegraphic speech stage, we start to use syntax, but we often start to do it incorrectly. So when we say goed versus went, eated versus ate, throwed versus threw, this is us trying to apply the ed as a past tense when it doesn't fit for the word that we're actually supposed to use. All right, and then finally, something that probably deserves a little bit more attention is the cultural factors of language acquisition and development. The idea of linguistic determinism, which is very much sort of the end game. Linguistic determinism, the words we have available are determining what we're able to think, versus linguistic relativism, the words that we have available influence the manner in which we think. But if you want to understand what this means, is that our our words are directly tied to our understanding of the world. And the more words we have, the greater understanding of the world that we can acquire. And an example of that, if you're looking at color as something that you're trying to know about, well, if you know the 8 colors of the crayon box and you know the words that are associated with those 8 colors, then you have a decent knowledge of colors. But if you know the 64 box of crayons and all the colors and the words associated with those colors, then you have a greater knowledge of color than the other. And if you have the 8, box, and you know all the colors associated with the words, then you have the greatest of the knowledge, right? So the idea that the words available to us also shape our ability to understand our world, and the greater amount of words we have, right, then the greater knowledge we can obtain. And when you think of multi-language speakers, they may have more words than us solo language speakers because not all words match up in each language. So they have a list of words in the languages that they are able to speak that don't have an equal in each language that they know, and therefore they have a higher amount of vocabulary, right, than the average person that speaks one of those languages. All right, so we did it. We did cognitive development, and then we tied in our ability to develop language and sort of the stages that we go through. All we really have left, which is my favorite part of development, is social development, which is a big part in sort of understanding who we are. So I'll see you then.